afternoon, everyone. As always, I want to thank you for your participation today. In this month's HR Manager meeting, we're going to talk about managing a difficult employee. As a result of completing this training activity with me, there's a couple of objectives that I hope we're going to accomplish. Number one, you're going to be able to identify when difficult behavior becomes problematic. Number two, you'll be able to list the 5 steps to adequately prepare for discussion using the ABITA model, which we'll talk about. Number 3, you'll be able to list the 5 steps in a successful coaching conversation designed to elicit change. Okay? And number 4, you're going to be able to describe techniques for appropriate follow-up and monitoring after you hold that successful coaching conversation. So I'm going to start us off with this quote, and I hope you will agree. Okay? Successful managers recognize that there are far fewer difficult employees than there are simply problematic behaviors. Now, I'm a firm believer that the majority of our employees, note, I did say majority, there may be some exceptions, right? But the majority of our employees don't come to work with the intent of being challenging or difficult. What makes us describe these employees as difficult is actually the behavior that they're exhibiting. So in your role as supervisor or manager, you're simply expected to manage the behavior of the employee and attempt to elicit change when that behavior doesn't meet company expectations or the expectations of the position. I will add, okay, you are not expected to be a doctor, a psychiatrist, a counselor, or a therapist, right? You're simply expected to manage the behavior and attempt to elicit change. Okay, so to get you in the mindset of identifying a difficult or challenging behavior, on page 6 of your training manual, I want you to think about an employee that you currently have that demonstrates a difficult behavior. I want you to answer these 2 questions. 1, describe the difficult behavior that you're personally experiencing right now. Okay? And number 2, how does that behavior affect the work environment? So take a minute now, individually answer these 2 questions, and then we'll open it up for discussion. Quite quickly, doesn't it? So someone tell me, what's a difficult behavior you're facing right now? Anyone? Gloria, go ahead.
Hi. An example of difficult behavior and experience is I have an employee that thinks that they're not being treated fairly.
Okay.
So that has resulted in her exhibiting, behavior that's inconsistent with what we're trying to foster in the environment.
Okay, good, good. Okay. We've got that one. What else? What other type of difficult behaviors? Amy?
Unprofessional communication.
Unprofessional communication with coworkers. Good. What else? Anyone? Kim?
Negative behavior to constructive feedback.
Reacting negatively towards constructive feedback. Great. Okay. So tell me, how do these behaviors impact the work environment? Kim?
They're sometimes taking that information and gossiping with their peers, and it
Okay.
causes more negative reaction.
Okay,
Right?
they're
They're perceived
good.
what they think is wrong. So.
They're fostering that negativity with other employees.
Absolutely.
Amy, what about you?
In my case with the unprofessional communications, it offends the recipient of the communication.
Right.
And they tend to avoid the person at all costs.
Right, now we're avoiding each other, we're limiting interaction, we're not working together, right? Great, good. Now, I want you to take the difficult behavior that you just wrote down. You're going to keep it right here as we walk through the rest of this training. And at the end of the training, we're going to come back to this, okay? So the first step to managing a difficult employee is understanding and recognizing the difficult behavior that they're exhibiting. Now through this activity, we identified some difficult behaviors that we're currently facing, okay? This is just a nice representation of some common behaviors that we see within the work environment. Complaining, negativity, uncooperative, they're rude, a lack of motivation, okay? So all of these behaviors are easy to identify as difficult. It was easy for us to come up with those, but how do we know when to address it? So difficult behavior becomes problematic when it affects other people. Once a difficult behavior becomes problematic, then it needs to be addressed, okay? So if a behavior is difficult, but it isn't causing problems, leaving it alone may actually be the best option. You risk being seen as a micromanager or a poor leader if you address behavior that isn't causing problems. A good example, the negative employee. They're always negative. They're always making negative comments. Yet it's not impacting team morale. Okay, the employees don't seem to be fazed by it. It may not be a behavior that you want to address. So to help you identify when does the difficult behavior become problematic, I have some criteria for you. Number one is, does the behavior interfere with the team's ability to perform? Okay. Number two, is the behavior damaging team unity? And number three, does it have an adverse or a negative effect on one or more of the team members? Now I'm going to introduce you to a case study. This is Amelina. She's the group lead in the billing department. It's odd. She bears a striking resemblance to me. It's weird. I don't know if you guys noticed that. But she's the group lead in the back end department. Excuse me. She's very knowledgeable of her job. She's been with the company for many years. However, she tends to be impatient and interrupts her teammates when they're talking. She can at times visibly demonstrate her frustration with outbursts that most people begin to accept as, that's Amelina. Her team members are starting to avoid communication with her, and they won't seek assistance from her, even though she's truly the subject matter expert. And so now, worse, employees from other departments are starting to ask for different projects that Amelina is not assigned to. So clearly, Amelina's behavior is difficult, but is it problematic? Well, let's walk through the criteria. So does her behavior interfere with the team's ability to perform? How?
They don't want to work with her.
They don't want to work with her. They may not be seeking her assistance, so they may be making mistakes, right, in their own work. Does it damage team unity? Yeah. Other people in other departments now don't want to work with her, right? And does it have an adverse or a negative effect on the team members? Apparently. Absolutely. Okay, so once we've identified that difficult behavior, we've met the criteria for problematic, we know that we need to go address it. The next step is actually preparing for the discussion with the employee. Now, this is one of the most important steps, and it's often missed, okay? We typically rush, we say, we've got to address this behavior, let's go have the conversation. But taking the time to really prepare and get ready for that conversation will increase the likelihood that you have a successful coaching conversation in which you're actually eliciting change in behavior from the employee. Okay? You're going to be more clear, you're going to be more concise in your communication. You're going to keep that communication on target, right? Because oftentimes employees will provide feedback and we get in circles, right? But you'll have your communication ready to go. So to help you prepare for the discussion, I've created an acronym, surprise, surprise, and I've highlighted each word, one word in each of the steps, and it's called the ABITA model, and it's to help you remember the steps to prepare for the discussion. So we're going to walk through these steps together. The first step is the A, or to assess the root cause of the behavior. Now I've given you some sample causes, maybe due to rivalry, a real or imagined result, a fear of change, pressure, a need for recognition, okay, a lack of trust. But if you take the time to come up with your own assessment of what you think the root cause may be, granted, you may have to ask some exploratory questions with the employee to really deep dive and understand the true cause. But if you go into it with your own understanding of what you think the cause is, you can develop empathy for the employee. You can see the employee's perspective and see the issue from their point of view. Now, if you're developing empathy, okay, and you're developing that sympathy and that understanding with the employee, you're going to facilitate a better conversation with the employee, okay? If the employee sees you as sympathetic and understanding, you can build trust, right? They're going to be more willing to engage in the conversation with you. The next step, the B in the ABITA model, is behavioral. You want to describe the behavior in behavioral terms, okay? And you want to ensure that you're focusing on the behavior and not the employee. So you're stating objective facts, okay? And you want to talk about what you see and what you hear. Now that's the undesired behavior. And then of course, once you've got that defined, you want to be able to explain what you want to see and hear, the desired behavior. Now the more specific that you can define the behavior, the easier it is for the employee to understand your expectations and then attempt to make that change. And then the I of the ABITA model is the impact. You want to be able to describe the impact of the behavior on the work environment. So you want to ask yourself, what about the behavior has a negative effect on the Dallas Revenue Center? You should be able to specifically state that negative effect, and the employee needs to understand how that behavior affects the work environment. Now this is a good check and balance for you as you work through the ABITA model, because if you can't describe the impact of the behavior, it may not meet the criteria for problematic behavior, indicating that you need to address it. Okay? Step 4 is your T. You want to create your talking points. Okay? You'll see on page 17 that I've created a template. It's just a bulleted list of items that you'll want to discuss. And you can use this template to assist you as you prepare for your conversation. And the last step is the A. You want to anticipate the employee's response. Now, I've given you some sample responses. Anger, intimidation, tears, maybe some emotion, right? Complaining, blaming, they may give you the silent treatment. They may demonstrate an unwillingness to resolve. Okay? And you'll see on page 19 and 20, I've included some techniques and some verbal statements that you can use to kind of counteract some of these responses that you may get in the conversation. So that's going to be a handy tool as you prepare for the discussion with the employee. Okay. So let's go back to our case study with Emelina. So for this activity, you're going to be in groups. You're going to get together. The number on your card will indicate what group you're in, so you'll want to get into the group with similar numbers. So go ahead and just kind of do that now. Just kind of get yourself situated into your groups so you guys can talk together. Okay? You're going to complete the ABITA model in the template for discussion on page 22 and 23 of your training manual. Please do not skip ahead to page 24. That would be cheating. Okay? And you're going to have 5 minutes to complete the ABITA model and the template for discussion. This isn't a lot of time, so you want to get right to it with your group. Now, I've concluded for you the information from the introduction to the case study that you already know. And then I've also given you a recent observation that you witnessed between Emelina and another employee, Julie. So on February 26th, Julie walks over to Emelina's desk to ask her a question, and Emelina sighs loudly. She says, "What?" Julie asks Emelina a question regarding one of her accounts. Emelina provides the answer, to which Julie responds with a confused look, stating, "I'm not sure I'm following you." Emelina groans and states, "We've talked about this before. Why don't you remember this information?" Her voice escalating as she speaks. Julie looks upset, she apologizes, and quickly walks away from Emelina's desk back to her own desk. So we'll discuss this together after 5 minutes of time. Please start working now. No. Okay. Pins down. I know that wasn't a lot of time. I heard some good conversation though. I liked what I was hearing and seeing as I walked around. So let's walk through this together. You may not have had an opportunity to complete it all, but we'll walk through it. So what do you think the root cause of Emelina's behavior was?
Frustration.
Frustration. Okay, she's frustrated. Why do you think she was frustrated?
And she said they had already talked about it before. She had already helped her before, and she
Okay.
didn't understand.
Okay, so the root cause was being asked information that I've already been answered before. Okay. Anyone else have a different answer? Okay.
Thank you.
So if we dig a little bit further, okay, I think that's a good assessment of root cause, but we know that Emelina's been with the company for a long time. She's obviously a subject matter expertise. She's got this strong technical knowledge. Do you think she might be a little impatient when others don't pick up on it as quickly or as easily or process it? Yeah, good job, good. So tell me, what was the undesired behavior? What did you see and hear?
Aggressive tone.
Aggressive tone, negativity,
Groaning.
groaning,
Loud.
sighing. Okay, you see and hear it, right? Okay, good. And what did you put as your specific example of behavior?
Big sigh.
Big sigh. You put your date. You had your date. It was 2:26, right? Okay. What happened after Emelina responded loudly by sighing?
Her voice escalated.
Voice escalated. Okay, good, good. So what's the impact of Emelina's behavior?
Employee walked away.
You have an upset
Without-
employee
Employees
that just
upset?
walks away.
Do you think they got the answer they
No.
needed? No. Okay. Does it create a good working relationship?
No.
Is Julie going to come back to Emelina?
No.
Probably not, right? She's going to be in your office now, right? So what's the desired behavior? What do you want to see from Emelina? Again, it's what you see and hear.
We want her to be open and approachable.
Yes.
So, no sighing,
No sighing?
She would put her work down and say, okay, just a second, let me finish this, or whatever, and get that done, and then be focused on the person who's coming to her for assistance.
Exactly, exactly. We want her to provide assistance and guidance to the employees. Good, good. So what are your expectations of Emelina? You want to think about the role that she's in, the position that she holds. What are your expectations of her? To be a leader. We want her to exercise patience, right, and understanding. And we want to ensure that she's providing assistance. So based on what you know about Emelina, what do you think her response would be? When you go in to confront her about this behavior, what do you think her response is going to be?
Defensive.
Defensive?
For denial.
Denial? She may complain.
Maybe just-
She might blame Julie.
She's
Right.
not taking good notes. I've explained this to her before.
Yeah. Okay, good, good. So this is just a nice model to help you remember the Avida and walk through the steps so you can prepare for the conversation. So we've identified that difficult behavior. We determined that it was problematic because it met the criteria. We created our talking points. We're prepared for our discussion. Now it's time to go hold it, right? Okay. So you want to remember that the purpose of successful coaching, the purpose of the conversation, is to elicit change in behavior. Okay? The whole success of the conversation lies in your ability to get the employee to speak, to get the employee involved in the communication process. And in order to do that, we have to stop talking, right? And the employee has to start, right? So why is that good? Why do we want the employee to speak and be involved in the communication process? Well, no one wants their expectations dictated to them. Gloria doesn't want me to tell her what I think she should do every single day, right? You want to be involved in the process. You want to be able to provide feedback, right? You want to be understood. You want your supervisor to hear your point of view and be sympathetic and be understanding to what it is that you're going through day in and day out. And if your supervisor is like that for you, you're much more willing to participate in the conversation, right? And if the employee's willing to participate in the conversation, and the employee's a part of the communication process, is there a better chance that they'll know what they need to do to go elicit that change, to make that desired behavior modification? Yes. Okay. So to walk through the 5 steps for successful coaching, again, surprise, surprise, I made an acronym to help you remember. I've highlighted one word from each step, and this is the piled method. We're going to walk through these steps together. So step 1, you want to state the purpose of the meeting and establish rapport. Now, establish rapport is just a fancy word, right, for creating that sympathetic and understanding relationship with the employee. So this is your opening statement in the meeting. You want to explain the purpose, establish the rapport, and then you also want to explain that the meeting is not to establish guilt or innocence, right? The purpose is to gain an understanding of their perspective. So even if you specifically witness and specifically observe the behavior, you know exactly what the employee did or didn't do, you still want to gain their perspective and gain their point of view. Okay? The next step is the I, the behavioral issue. You want to get agreement that there's a problem and that it actually exists. So you want to specifically state the behavioral issue. You want to describe the impact of the behavior. And don't make this harder than it already is. You've already prepared this. It's on your template for discussion. You've already prepared for this conversation, right? And the third step, the L, is listen. And this is the most important step of the whole process, okay? So you want to invite employees to speak with open-ended questions. And open-ended questions elicit longer responses than just the simple yes or no or the one-word answer, right? There's a couple of listening techniques that you can use, like paraphrasing. And that's successful because you repeat back what the employee said to ensure that you have full clarification. So phrases may be, what I hear you saying is, when you say this, you mean this. And let me see if I understand, okay? And there's also say more phrases. Oh, go on, I'd like to hear more, right? To get that employee to speak, encourage them to participate in the conversation. And like we talked about already, you want to allow the employee the opportunity to speak. If they don't speak, give them silence. It's very awkward to sit in a conversation in a room with just 2 people in silence. Okay, it'll provoke them into conversation. And again, your goal is to facilitate the dialogue to get the employee to buy into making the desired behavior change. So you want to hear what is said, integrate it back to the topic, and then make a statement to move the conversation forward. Okay? And then step 4 is the E, or explore solutions with the employee. So after you listen to the employee, you want to state the desired behavior change. Again, this is coming from your ABITA template. You've already prepared it. So you're going to state clear, concise expectations, and you want to wait for the employee to propose the solution before proposing your own. Okay? We're working together. It's a collaborative effort. We're working jointly to come up with a solution. And why is that important? If the employee is a part of the solution and gets to have feedback and a say in what the solution is, they're much more likely to go and implement that solution, right? So you want to, again, ask those open-ended questions and then gain commitment from the employee. And this is where assessing the root cause comes back into play. If you've come up with what you think the cause is, you probably know what a good solution is. And so you can help guide the employee to that solution and facilitate the conversation to get there without going and just telling them, right? And the last step of this, of the E section, is you want to honestly provide the consequences if the behavior continues. It doesn't have to be heavy-handed. It doesn't have to say, I'm going to write you up, you're going to be fired, right? It can simply be, hey, as your supervisor, I will have to hold you accountable if this behavior continues, but I need to let you know, okay? And step 5, the D of the piled method, is to devise the action plan to correct behavior. So you want to create a plan with an appropriate time frame. Okay? Define the responsible party for the action items, and that may mean that you have some action items, and if you do, you have to commit to ensuring that those occur. So once you've agreed on that solution, you're creating your plan, and these are specific steps, what actually needs to take place, what actually needs to happen, okay, in order to correct the behavior. Now, as you're going through this with the employee, you may find that the desired behavior that you want, there's a roadblock, there's an obstacle that prevents them from completing that desired behavior. As a supervisor, it may be your action item to remove it and make sure that it's gone so you can facilitate that success. Okay? And then you want to close the discussion with encouragement. The employee should leave your office feeling good about what it is they need to go do to fix the problem. So back to our case study with Emelina. So you're going to watch Emily, she's the billing supervisor, attempt to have a discussion with Emelina to confront her difficult behavior. So the script from the video is located on page 33 of your training manual. And then I want you to turn to page 34. You're going to see a checklist for coaching conversation. So as we watch this video, I want you to check off the items that you feel Emily completes successfully. There's also a note section in the bottom, and I want you to write down areas of opportunity for Emily. What do you think she could improve upon?
Emelina, I wanted to discuss your behavior today. You were completely inappropriate and rude toward Julie this morning. This is just another example of the serious behavior problems that we have to discuss.
Excuse me? Are you saying that I'm at fault? What about Julie? She interrupted me when I was trying to finish that report for you, and she always asked me the same questions over and over.
This isn't about Julie. This is about you, Emelina. Your behavior is inappropriate and is causing employees to avoid interaction with you.
Well, with all due respect, I was here before you, and my behavior has not changed. The team is used to me, and there's no problem.
I need for you to understand that there is a problem with your behavior.
I don't think I can continue this conversation. I'm really upset. Can I be excused?
Fine, but we have to continue this conversation when you're ready to admit that you have a problem.
Okay. So let's walk through the checklist. Did you check anything off?
Stated the purpose of the
Stated the purpose. Yeah, wanted to discuss your behavior. Very good. So she sort of gave the purpose. Did she establish rapport with the employee? No. Did she state the undesired behavior?
Yes.
She did?
Not specific behavior.
Very good. She said it's rude, inappropriate.
Yeah.
What does that mean, right? What does that mean? What did I do to indicate that it was rude or inappropriate? Did she describe the impact?
No.
She did. She said it causes employees to avoid interaction. Quick, yep. Did she listen to the employee? No, in fact, she interrupted her and cut her off, right? Did she obtain agreement from the employee that a problem exists? No. She tried, right? Hey, I need you to understand there's a problem here, right? Didn't work, okay? So that definitely put the employee on defensive. Emelina was upset, right? She couldn't even continue the conversation. Her tone was negative, it's attacking. Did she work collaboratively? Did she seek input? No. Did she even attempt to understand Emelina's point of view? No. She cut her off when she tried to explain, right? Any other areas of opportunity that you observed?
She didn't ask questions or use the open-ended to
Yeah.
engage.
She just made statements.
Right. She didn't engage the associate in the conversation at all.
Very good, very good. Anything else?
She was very firm and stern.
Is that conducive to creating a good dialogue? No. Okay. Very good. So let's, clearly that conversation headed in the wrong direction, right? So now that we've indicated the areas of opportunity, let's see if Emily can fix them. So go to page 39. You'll see another checklist for the coaching conversation. And And as you watch this video again, check off the items that Emily completed successfully. There's also a note section at the bottom if you want to indicate strengths. And if you see or observe things that you like, take it. Okay, this training is for you. Write that down in your notes section.
Hey, Melina, how's your day going so far? It's okay. Good. Hey, I wanted to thank you for meeting with me today. I know you have a full plate right now. So I put this time on our calendar so we can talk about a difficult interaction I noticed between you and Julie this morning. I observed that when Julie came to ask you a question, you responded by sighing happily. I also observed that when she appeared to be confused by your answer, your voice rose and your response didn't demonstrate patience or understanding. Julie's response to your tone and word choice was a hurtful look. Your behavior toward Julie does not work to create a good working relationship, and Julie may not want to come back to you to ask questions if that's how she's treated. Julie complained about me, didn't she? If she would just learn the rules of her accounts like everyone else and stop asking the same questions over and over, I wouldn't get so upset. And she interrupted me when I was trying to get that report done for you. Well, I understand that you believe this is a problem due to Julie's behavior, and I'm willing to hear more about that in a later discussion. For now, though, I'm specifically focusing on your behavior. What do you think you could have done differently? Well, I guess I did snap at her. I just get so frustrated when people approach me when I have a deadline. Well, you truly are a subject matter expert when it comes to government payers, and I greatly value your contributions to the back-end department. But Julie is new to her role, and the other employees may not have the same strong technical knowledge that you do. That's why you're a group lead, so the rest of the team can leverage your expertise. If we were to rewind back to the situation, what do you think you could have done instead? I guess I could have chosen not to sigh, and maybe kept my frustration out of my voice. Since I was already feeling frustrated, I guess I also could have politely told her that I had a hard deadline I needed to meet, but that I'd be able to come to an escalator to help her. Good. I think those are great ideas, and that both would align with my expectations that you provide assistance and guidance to your teammates and exercise patience when they don't understand something. You should also feel empowered to ask employees if you can schedule time with them later if you have a deadline you need to meet. Is there anything else you think you could do? I would like to take an IntelliQuest course to assist me, but I just don't have the time. I think that's a great idea. I'll look at the catalog and we can discuss it next week in our one-on-one. Why don't you do the same and we can pick a class together? I'll ensure that you have the time blocked off in your calendar and can assist with any pressing questions you have during that time frame. That'd be great. Do you have any other suggestions for me? Well, I'd also like to know if an employee is asking repeated questions. This may indicate a need for additional training. Can we agree that you'll share this with me when it happens? Yeah, I can do that. Okay, good. Now you've provided some great ways to handle the situation that occurred this morning. And we agree that you'll let me know when an employee is asking repetitious questions so we can look at a need for additional training. I'll also ask you that you send me an email with some of the repetitive questions that Julie was asking so I can assess if there's a need for additional training for her. I'll also keep this as an agenda item in our next one-on-one, and we'll commit to looking at the IntelliQuest course catalog to help find a course to assist you. You're not alone in this. I will continue to provide you with coaching and guidance in your one-on-ones so we can continue to improve your interactions with your coworkers. As your supervisor, I do need to tell you that if your behavior continues, I'll have to hold you accountable. I'm confident, though, that we've created a good action plan to assist you. Is there anything else you need from me? No, I understand. So I'll look at the IntelliQuest course catalog before our one-on-one next week. And I'll go back to my desk and send you a quick email about Julie, but you're probably right. She's still really new to her role, and I think she's still learning and trying to find her footing with her peers. Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, Emelina. I really do appreciate your input and working with me on this solution. With the help of the IntelliQuest course and keeping an agenda item for this discussion, I'm confident that a problem can be solved. Thanks, Emily.
Okay. Did she state the purpose of the meeting?
Yes.
Okay. Did she establish rapport with the employee?
Yes.
Yeah, and she said she even thanked her and said, hey, I know you have a full plate. I appreciate it. Did she specifically state the undesired behavior? Yes. Okay. Did she tell the impact of the behavior to Emelina?
Yes.
She did. Did she attain agreement from the employee that a problem existed?
Yes.
Okay. And she listened?
Yes.
Okay. Did she use a paraphrasing technique? She repeated back
Right.
what Emelina said to make sure she had full clarification. Did she invite the employee to speak with open-ended questions? Okay. Did you get clear, concise expectations from her? Okay. Did we explore solutions with the employee?
Yes.
Did Emelina even provided some of her own, right? Did she devise an action plan for correction? Did each party know who was responsible for what?
Yes.
Okay. Did she tell the consequences if the behavior continues?
Yes.
She did. And did the conversation end with encouragement?
Yes.
Any other strengths that you noticed as you watched this video?
She was open to the employee suggestions.
Exactly. She was open to the suggestions. Good. What else?
She was pleasant, her tone of voice was
Yeah.
open and inviting, like not attacking.
Yeah. Good. Very good. What else? Did you notice in the beginning, Emelina immediately started complaining and then said, well, Julie did this. What did Emily do?
She said we'd talk about it later.
And did
so
she come
focus
back
back
to
on
it?
her.
Yes.
And she did.
Yes.
So she redirected back to Emelina's behavior, right? Hey, let's focus on you. Did she remove an obstacle for Emelina? That's towards the end. She did? What'd she do?
She was gonna make sure she blocked her schedule so that she would not be interrupted while she's
Taking her
Taking her
course.
course.
Very good, very good. And does she compliment and talk about Emelina's strengths and make her feel good about being an employee? Yeah. Anything else? Good, very good. Okay, so we identified the behavior, we determined it was problematic, and prepared for our discussion. We held the conversation. We're done, right? No. The next step is appropriate follow-up and monitoring. So I'm going to give you another quote. One of the most common mistakes managers make is to have the appropriate conversation with the employee, consider the matter closed, put the file away. Done, right? The greatest factor in sustaining improvement in performance is follow-up. So your very first action item following that meeting is the follow-up email, right? This is your documentation, A, that your coaching conversation has taken place. B, it lets the employee know in writing what you just talked about, okay? You want to ensure that you include all of these things, your observed behavior, the impact of the behavior, your expectations of the employee. Now again, you've already created this. You put it together. All you have to do is copy and paste those bulleted items into your email, okay? You want to give the reason the employee provided for the cause of the behavior. You want to outline the action plan so the employee remembers what steps they need to take. And then, of course, describe the consequences if the behavior continues. So all of these things should be included in your follow-up email and should probably go within 24 hours of the conversation. Why do I say that? You should send it when it's freshest on your mind, right? The longer you wait, the less details you're going to have. So here's some techniques for appropriate follow-up. And one of the easiest things you can do is simply schedule the follow-up meeting. Hey, we talked about the behavior. I gave you this action item. Maybe you gave them a technique or something to try out with your coworkers. Schedule the follow-up meeting, come back, talk to me about it. How did it go? What worked? What didn't work? And if you see even the slightest change in behavior towards what you're looking for, you need to acknowledge it, right? And if you truly see the desired behavior change, you definitely want to acknowledge it. If you don't, you're saying our conversation was not important, right? And the easiest way to schedule that follow-up meeting and ensure that it actually happens is to use your Outlook calendar. Right there in the moment, you're having the meeting, you say, hey, I'm going to schedule a meeting 1 week from now. I'm going to put it on our calendars right now. I'm going to invite you. It's there. It's done. You know the follow-up's going to happen. Okay? You can put reminders, right, on your calendar. When you open up my Outlook calendar, there's 5 or 6 things at the top of action items that I need to follow up on pretty much every day. Okay, so those are my reminders to ensure that I follow up on those. And then, to create more work for yourself, we have a system of documentation, a tool that we use, our performance tracker. At the end of your performance tracker is a follow-up column. When you open up that performance tracker and there's nothing in the follow-up column, that would indicate that you have an action item, right? And then these are monitoring techniques, okay? Again, auditing the work environment. Go walk the floor, observe interactions between employees. Maybe Annette goes and sits in Annabelle's cube, and Annabelle sits in Annette's office for a day, so Annette can observe, okay? And be a part of the work environment. Your staff meetings are a good way to observe interactions between employees. You should be having them weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, depending upon your department or the function that you're servicing. And your staff meetings should be open for discussion, engagement, and dialogue, right? So it's a good way to observe behavior. You're also going to have your monthly one-on-one that you're having with all of your direct reports. Now, this may be too timed out, right? You may need to schedule meetings in between the monthly one-on-one. But that would probably be a good agenda item for your monthly one-on-one, whatever the coaching conversation was about, okay? And then the last technique is to solicit feedback from others. Now I'm going to give you a caveat on this one. I'm going to caution you for a second. You know who are credible reporters, accurate reporters of information, okay? We always take feedback with a grain of salt, right? We don't jump to conclusions or make assumptions based on what someone tells us. But an employee may have interactions with myself. I hope you consider me credible. I can provide feedback to you. They may have interactions with other group leads, with other supervisors, billing managers, director, Dana, the corporate billing team, okay? So solicit that feedback, but again, you're taking it with a grain of salt. You know who your credible sources of information are, right? And then you explore that feedback with the employee. So here's your takeaways for today. So one, once you recognize the difficult behavior, right, it's not the employee, it's the behavior that they're exhibiting. You've determined the criteria, you know it's problematic, you know you need to go address it. The next step is you prepare for the discussion. You complete your ABITA model, you complete your template for discussion. You're anticipating that employee's response, you're ready to handle that. And you have your successful coaching conversation utilizing the piled method, okay? And after that method, conversation's not over, right? You're continuing and setting up your monitoring and follow-up techniques using some of the things that we talked about. And your very first action item, of course, is your follow-up email. So remember that difficult behavior we described in the beginning in our opening activity? I want you, before you leave today, take that difficult behavior and ask yourself, does it meet the criteria? Is it now problematic? Do I need to address it? If it is, take your ABITA model and template for discussion and put it together. Okay? Anticipate what you think the employee's response is going to be and read about the techniques for it. Then I want you to hold the coaching conversation. And supervisors, hold the coaching conversation with your manager. Okay? Your manager's going to be present while you're talking to the employee. Managers, you're going to check off the checklist to make sure the supervisor hits all of those items. You're going to use the notes section to identify strengths and areas of opportunity. And after the employee exit, you guys can talk about it. Okay? And then also following that conversation, you're going to talk about next steps, right? The follow-up, the next meeting. You're using your staff meeting, your one-on-one, and how you're going to monitor the change in behavior. So you're going to do all that in our next HR manager meeting, and this is per Amy Moss's expectations. In the next HR manager meeting, we're going to report back. You're going to tell me how it went. We'll have a roundtable discussion on it. Okay? Any questions so far? So guys, thank you. I really, really do appreciate your participation today. As always, it's a lot of fun. Their last section is the page 46 of your training manual. There's a post-session survey. If you'll just complete that before you leave today, just take a few minutes. That really gives me valuable feedback so that I can continue to service you and become better as your HR partner. Guys, I really thank you today. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.